Very good, very good.
نبدأ من أي محل رامي؟
في صلاة الجمعة أو نعم صلاة الجمعة. So now we're on page 36.
أرجو أن تكون هنا جمعة. أرجو الجمعة هنا.
So again, we're going to try to finish up at least the section of the prayer tonight. So any questions, we'll leave them to the end. And if there's any questions that people have on the previous section on Sahu, the prostration of forgetfulness, we'll leave them till the end or until after Isha. صلاة الجمعة. فصل بموطن قرى قد فرضت صلاة جمعة لخطبة تلت بجامع على مقيم من عذر حر قريب بك فرسخ ذكر وأجزأت غير النعم قد تندب عند النداء السعي إليها يجب.
نعم. فصل
بموطن القرى قد فرضت.
نعم. فصل بموطن القرى قد فرضت صلاة جمعة لخطبة تلت. بموطن القرى فرضت صلاة الجمعة في موطن القرى، يعني القرية بلد يمكن أهله الثواء صيفا وشتاء بحيث لا يحتاجون إلى مدينة أخرى يستجلبون منها أرزاقهم على الدوام، معناها ما يحتاجون يأخذون الخبز من هذا ويأخذون الماء من هذا، معناها عندهم ما يكفيهم مثلا في بلدهم، ويمكنهم الذب عن أنفسهم ممن يقصدهم عادة. أي قد فرضت صلاة جمعة لخطبة تلت تجب فيها الخطبة، فلو فعلت بغير خطبة بطلت. ويجب في هذه الخطبة أن تكون بعد دخول الوقت، فلو فعلت قبل دخول الوقت أو شيء منها بطلت الصلاة. بجامع معناها بمسجد جامع يجمع الناس، وفي هذا دليل على أن تعدد المساجد لا يجوز إلا إذا دعت إلى ذلك ضرورة، كأن يعظم المصر جدا أو يضيق المسجد ولا يجدون فيه توسعة. على مقيم من على شخص مقيم إقامة تقطع حكم السفر، يعني جلس في هذا البلد 4 أيام وكان من أهل ذلك البلد متوطنا. من عذر أي ليس له عذر، فلو كان له مرض أو مشقة يلحقه الضرر لو ذهب إلى المسجد لما لزمه ذلك. حر لا عبد، فالعبد لا تجب عليه الجمعة. قريب بك فرسخ، يعني داخل القرية ولو بعد، أو خارجا عنها ولكن بك فرسخ، يعني 3 أميال وذهلث ميل. ذكر يعني رجل لامرأة، فالمرأة لا تجب عليها الجمعة بل ولا تندب لها في هذا الزمان ولا تطلب منها.
3 أميال وثلث ميل
بك فرسخ. الفرسخ 3 أميال.
نعم.
ادخلت الكاف ذلول.
In villages and cities, it is required to pray the congregational prayer that follows the sermon. So this is about the Jumu'ah prayer. So if there's a village or a city, and a village is defined by a place that where people live, and they have enough things to support them there in times of summer and winter. So they have enough there to take care of their basic necessities as far as food and water. They're not dependent on another city. Whereas if they're dependent on other places, like it's not a self-sustained, not a totally self-sustained, but its basic necessities are there. They can sustain themselves in in times of winter and times of summer. Then they're considered a city or a village. Also, they have to be able to defend themselves under normal circumstances. And what that means is that a small city, of course, is not going to be able to defend itself from an invading army, for example, like Hayward would not be able to withstand an army, but that's not normal circumstances. But normal circumstances is once in a while you have car thieves, robbers, whatever it is, and so they have enough going on in the city right now as far as police force to protect themselves from normal crime.
قال بك فرسخ إن أدخلت ثلث الفرسخ هو 4 كيلوات، ولكن عنه وجعلها استقصائية وميارة، قال إنها فرسخ فقط. نعم أظن ذلك ولي قال الدرديري.
So if they're able to support themselves in times of winter and summer, and they have at least 12 men that are there living for the, not 12 men, but the people that are living in that city intend to live there for indefinitely. It's not a seasonal village or a seasonal city. So if it falls under those conditions in the villages and cities, it is required to pray the congregational prayer, and that's 2 rak'ahs at the time of dhuhr. So if it's prayed before the time of dhuhr, it's invalid. And then after that, and that prayer, those 2 rak'ahs follow a sermon, a khutbah, and the khutbah also has certain conditions, that it must be in Arabic. Also, it must be the khutbah and the prayer takes place in a masjid, and a masjid erected for the Friday gathering, that it's erected in the intention that this is a masjid. So it can't just be a regular building or a school or something else. It has to be a masjid erected for the purpose of praying in it, and it's now an endowment for as a mosque. And also, the jami', there can only be one in the city, so you have to pray the Jumu'ah in the oldest masjid or the first masjid where Jumu'ah is prayed. And so it's not permissible for them to have multiple Jumu'ahs in one city unless there's a need, like there becomes so many people in the city that they're not able to pray in that original masjid, and they cannot expand the masjid, they cannot buy the surrounding areas. So then at that point they can have multiple masjids. But if they're able to, if the people that it's incumbent upon them to pray Jumu'ah, if they can all pray in the same masjid, they have to have one masjid, and that would be the first masjid where Jumu'ah was prayed. And then this is an obligation binding upon every resident of the city, so it's not binding upon travelers, without a valid excuse not to attend. Like if a person's sick, or if he's taking care of a sick person, or for whatever, he's fearful of his wealth being stolen, if he goes to attend the Jumu'ah, then those are some of the valid excuses that a person can forego the Jumu'ah prayer. Also, he is a free male, so upon bondspeople and upon women it's not incumbent. And also lives within a farsakh, 3 miles of the masjid. So it's 3 miles, and some say 3.3 miles. And these again are Arab miles, so which would be equivalent to about the kilometer. So 3 kilometers or 3.3 kilometers of the masjid. So if a person lives and if he lives within the city limits, even if he's farther than 3.3 miles away from the masjid, regardless of how far he is from the masjid, if he's within the city limits, he has to go to Jumu'ah. But if there's a masjid, saying it's a small city, and he lives outside of the city limits, but he's within 3.3 miles of the masjid, then he has to pray Jumu'ah. وأجزأت غير النعم قد تندب عند النداء السعي إليها يجب.
وإجزاءت غير من تجب عليه إجزاءته المرأة والصبي والعبد، إلا أن المرأة لا يطلب منها أن تأتي أي مسجد في هذا الزمان. قالت عائشة رضي الله عنها كما في حديث مسلم: لو أدرك النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ما عليه النساء في هذا الزمان لمنعهن. غير النعم قد تندب الصبي إذا كان ما عليه في ذلك حرج مندوب له، أو العبد إذا أذن له سيده، مسافر إذا حضرها تندب له وتجزئه. عند النداء السعي إليها يجب على من تجب عليه الجمعة أن يذهب إليها عند النداء الثاني. هذا إذا كان ذلك يبلغه المسجد قبل فوات الجمعة. ما إذا كان لا يبلغه إلا أن يسير قبل ذلك بوقت، فاللازم عليه أن يسير عند الوقت الذي يبلغه المسجد قبل فوات الجمعة.
But it also suffices in the place of dhuhr others upon whom it is not incumbent, such as women and travelers. So if dhuhr is not, if Jum'ah is not incumbent upon a person, like a child or a traveler or a woman, he said if a person prays the Jum'ah, then it's a valid substitute for dhuhr. He said, but he did mention, he said that for women in this day and age, it wouldn't be recommended for them to go to the masajid because of all the fitna that's present. And he mentioned the saying of Aisha radiallahu anha, where she said that if the Prophet sallallahu, because there's a hadith where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, don't prevent the.
قالت هي لو أدرك النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم مع النساء.
نعم ولكن الأصل إنه كأنه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if don't prevent the female servants of Allah from going to the masjid. And that was in response to a woman that wanted to go to the masjid and wanted to know if her husband could prevent her. And then Aisha radiallahu anha said later, she said if the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had lived until this time, he wouldn't have said that. He would have prevented women from going to the masjid because of the tribulations that occurred after that. Indeed, it is even recommended when the call for it is made, then it is obliged to respond immediately. So if a person's living within close proximity of the masjid and they hear the second adhan for the Jum'ah, at that time they have to immediately go to the masjid so that they listen to the entire khutbah and pray the 2 rak'ahs. And this is if they know that once they hear the second adhan, they have enough time to go to the masjid and they won't miss any portion of the khutbah. But if they know that they're too far away, and even once they hear the adhan, it's going to take them long, they have to start going towards the masjid before the adhan is even called. So the point is that they have to get to the masjid in time to be there present for the khutbah and for the prayer. وسنة غسل بالرواح اتصلان نديب تهجير وحال جملا.
سنة غسل بالرواح اتصل. سنة غسل متصل بالرواح. سنة أن يغتسل، لكن في المذهب المالكي سنة أن يكون متصلا بالرواح وما يجلس حتى تجف أعضاؤه، ما يفعل فعلا يطول بحيث ما تجف أعضاؤه. وعند غيره ما في حرج مهم بعد طلوع الفجر. ندب تهجير، مندوب أن يهجر وهو يمشي مباشرة عند انتصاف النهار، الساعة التي تلي انتصاف النهار بأولها، ذلك هو التهجير عند مالك. خالف الأئمة الآخرون فقالوا مندوب التبكير كل ما كان التبكير موجود أفضل. وحال شمل مندوب أن يتجمل إذا كان رجلا، يعني يلبس الثياب الأبيض فهو أفضل من غيره ولو كان الأبيض عتيقا، ويجعل مثلا الطيب ويقص أظافره وشاربه ويفعل الزينة يعني البدنية داخلية والظاهرية.
It is sunnah to perform ghusl just before leaving for the prayer. So if a person is going to go to the Jum'ah, they do a ghusl just before leaving to the prayer. It is also recommended to leave for it at that time of the midday heat before the zenith. So a person should it's recommended for them to go right at the hottest time of the day when the sun's right at the highest point in the sky, and then go at that time. The other 3 imams said that it's actually better for a person to go earlier, and the earlier they go in the day, the better. But Imam Malik has the opinion that he goes just right at the midday heat, right before the zenith, right before the time Dhuhr comes in. And then it's also recommended for the person going to Jum'ah to go in an elegant manner, and this means wearing good clothes. And the best clothes are white, even if the clothes are old, even if they're old. And also having cut the nails, removed pubic and underarm hair, applied perfume, and worn one's best clothes. بجمعة جماعة قد وجبت سنة بفرض وبركعة رست.
نعم، الجمعة تجب فيها الجماعة فما تصح فيها الفردية. جماعة قد وجبت سنة بفرض، سنة على مشهور المذهب المالكي، وقيل واجب كفاية يعني يقوم بها البعض عن البعض، وقيل فرض عين، وهذا القول قوي جدا وله أدلة، ولكن المشهور في المذهب المالكي أنها سنة. كل الأقوال له أدلة قوية والأشهر السنية. وبركعة رأس تحصل الجماعة يحصل فضلها بركعة كاملة، فلو أدرك شيئا أقل من ركعة حصل له فضل ذلك القدر، ولكن ما يحصل له فضل الجماعة كلها.
For the Friday prayer, a congregation of 13 people is needed to fulfill it. So to have a congregation for Jumu'ah prayer is wajib, it's incumbent. 13 people, that's 12 people plus the Imam. For other obligatory prayers, it's a confirmed sunnah. To pray in a congregation is a confirmed sunnah, and that's according to the dominant opinion of the madhab of Imam Malik. There's other opinions that say it's a fard kifaya, it's a collective obligation that in every place where there's Muslims residing, there should be at least a portion of the community praying in congregation. Another opinion of one of the other imams is that it's a fard ayn, that every man that's able to pray in jama'ah in the congregation should do so, and they have very strong proofs for that. He said, so there's 3 opinions. The dominant opinion of Imam Malik is that it's sunnah to pray in a congregation, but the other opinions are also very strong, that says it's a collective obligation, and even the opinion that says it's an individual obligation upon males to pray in jama'ah. The reward of praying in congregation is realized with only 1 rak'ah performed behind the imam. So if a person gets less than 1 rak'ah behind the imam, like he comes into the jama'ah after he's raised from the last rak'ah ruku' of the last rak'ah, then like he got the imam in the last tashahhud, then he does not get the reward of this jama'ah. He has to catch at least one rak'ah with the imam, and that's by going into ruku' before the imam begins rising out of the last ruku'. وندبت إعادة الفذ بها لا مغربا كذا عشا متيرها.
نعم، إنسان صلى وحده وبعد ذلك وجد اثنين فأكثر، مندوب له أن يصلي معهم. هذا إذا كان الوقت موجودا. لا مغربا فمكروه إعادتها أو حرام، كذا عشا موترها، كذلك العشاء بعد الوتر ففيها الخلاف.
It is recommended for an individual to repeat a prayer that he has prayed alone should he find a congregation praying it. So if a person prays any fard prayer by themselves and then later on they find a jama'ah praying that same prayer, it's recommended for him to pray that. This excludes Maghrib as well as Isha if he has already performed the witr. So if a person prayed Maghrib by themselves and then shortly after found a jama'ah praying Maghrib, it's not recommended for them to repeat it. As well as Isha if he has already performed the witr. So if a person prayed Isha by themselves and then prayed the witr prayer right afterwards, and then later found the jama'ah praying the Isha prayer, it's not recommended for them to repeat Isha with the jama'ah. Because the last prayer of the night before a person goes to sleep should be the witr prayer, the last prayer of the night. So if a person has not prayed witr, it's recommended for them to repeat in the jama'ah. شرط الإمام ذكر مكلف آت بالأركان وحكما يعرفه.
تابع.
وغير ذي فسق ولحن واقتداء في جمعة حر مقيم عددا.
والدداء. شرط الإمام ذكر مكلف. شرط الإمام أن يكون رجلا ذكرا. شرط الإمام ذكر يعني يكون رجلا مكلف، يعني بالغ لا صبي. آت بالأركان معناه يأتي بالأركان، ليس عاجزا عن ركن ما، ليس عاجزا عن سجود ولا عن ركوع. إلا إذا كان بمثله، كان يصلي جالسا والآخر يصلي جالسا يمكن أن يصلي به. وحكما يعرف أحكام الصلاة، يعني وآكد ذلك أحكام الاستجمار. وغير ذي فسق أن يكون غير فاسق كحالق اللحية ومدخن الحشيشة إلى غير ذلك من أنواع الفسق الكثيرة. هذا قال ابن عاشر لا تجوز الصلاة به، وكذلك قال خليل وجمع كثير من العلماء. البعض قال إذا كان محافظا على أمور الصلاة ويعرف شروطها يمكن أن يصلي الشخص به مع الكراهة، ولكن عن هذا في حق العدل. أما الفاسق كمثلا حالق لحية بحالق لحية أو مدخن خلف مدخن يمكن أن يصلي، لأن إنما يطلب الفضل له. أما من كان مجروحا بتلك الجارحة يقول له ما لبائك تجر وبائي لا تجر، قل له أنت مجروح مثلي.
The conditions of the Imam. The conditions for the Imam are that he be a legally responsible male, so the person has to be a male. A woman cannot be the Imam. He also has to be legally responsible. He has to be mukallaf, so a child cannot be the Imam. Who fulfills all of the pillars. He's physically able to fulfill all the pillars of the prayer and is knowledgeable about the prayer's rules. So he knows about what's incumbent for the prayer, what invalidates the prayer, what are the conditions of the prayer, and prior to that, he knows about how to find the qibla and how to use knows he prays during the time, and also that he knows how to attain purity, what type of water to use, how to clean himself after relieving himself, and so forth. Also that he's free from deviance in either creed or deed. And this is what is in Arabic is fisq, and this is that a person does something an enormity or does one of the lesser sins, but does it continuously. And the Shaykh gave us an example: a person that smokes, or if a person shaves their beard, then that would be considered that they have fisq in their creed or in their deed. And so a person, he says Ibn Ashir here is saying that it actually invalidates the prayer if you pray behind this person. And this is also the opinion of Khalil. And Ashar al-Masalik and many other scholars, and the majority of the texts of the Maliki madhab. but he said a number of scholars also hold opinion that as long as that person, that fasiq, either in his creed or his deed, as long as he's performing the prayer correctly, that the prayer is valid, but it's just disliked for him to pray behind that person. So the one opinion is that if a person's a fasiq, it invalidates the prayer by praying behind them, even if he completes all the conditions. The other opinion says that if he's, it's disliked for him to pray for a person to pray behind him, but and the prayer is valid. And this is for if, say, you have a just person, an adil, praying behind the fasiq. That's where you have the difference of opinion. If you have a just person praying behind the fasiq, so now you have a righteous person praying behind a non-righteous person, that's where there's difference of opinion. Whereas if you have two fasiqs, one leading the other, then the prayer is valid. What's that? Correct.
أئمتكم شفعاؤكم ولا يرضى أحد أن يكون فاسق شفيعه الفاسق ليس مقبولا عند الله.
So he said that the imams of the prayer are your intercessors. And so a person shouldn't be content with having, like placing as his intercessor between him and Allah, somebody that's a fasiq, somebody that's a deviant Muslim. ولحن واقتداء في جمعة حر مقيم عددا.
شخص يلحن في الصلاة لا يقدم. شخص يلحن يبدل الذال زاء ويبدل الضاد غاء ويفعل أشياء لحنية موجودة لا يقدم في الصلاة لا لحن واقتداء. ولم يكن أدرك مع الإمام ركعة فأكثر مع إمام آخر ركعة فأكثر. ولو كان أدرك مع قوم آخرين ركعة وجاء واحد آخر ما يمكن أن يصلي بهم. ما لو كان أدرك أقل من ركعة فلو صلى أحد بهم لما ضره ذلك إذا انفصل عن الإمام. يعني
الذي قلت أخير ما هو؟
إذا انفصل، إذا كان انفصل عن الإمام سلم الإمام وهو قام لو صلى به أحد
وما أدرك
ركعة ولو كان اقتدى به ما زال مع الإمام ما زال مرهون مسجون بالإمامية. بجمعة حر مقيم عدد. الجمعة شرط أن يكون حرا مقيما إقامة تقطع حكم السفر، يعني جالس هنا 4 أيام، خلافا للشوافع القائلين أنه يمكن أن يصلي المسافر جمعة إماما. مقيم عدد معناه مهيأ للصلاة.
Also, the imam has to be free, have faulty Arabic pronunciation. If the imam has faulty Arabic pronunciation, then to take him in as an imam would invalidate the prayer. So, for example, if a person replaces dad with za, or dal with zad, that would invalidate the prayer. Now, this is if he's doing it out of ignorance, he doesn't know the rules of recitation, or he's doing it intentionally. He's going to talk about a person that they're not able to correctly pronounce it. So if this is and that's lahan in Arabic. So if a person has lahan, that would invalidate the prayer to pray behind him. Or be in the process of having been following another imam. If a person's following another imam and you come in and now you're making this follower as your imam, that invalidates the prayer because he cannot be a follower. The imam cannot be a follower. But there's only one situation where the follower can become the imam, and that's where if he did not catch any rak'ahs with the imam, after the imam says Assalamu alaikum, when this person stands up to complete his prayer, like it's dhuhr, he's now going to make up 4 rak'ahs because he did not catch anything with the imam, then the person could pray behind him.
Could you repeat that when you were saying someone has left hand? Does that mean speech impediment or does it mean ignorance or?
Ignorant, lahan, he's going to talk about lakin, which is a speech impediment. But lahan, if it's a person that is doing it intentionally, he knows that he's reciting wrong, but he doesn't care. So he was just careless, or he was ignorant, he was careless, and he did not properly learn the rules of how to properly recite the Quran. So that he's going to talk about that. As for the Friday prayer, the imam must also be a free man and a local resident. So also for the Jumu'ah prayer, the imam must be a free male. He cannot be a bondsman. And a local resident, he cannot be a traveler. And this is in contrast to the Shafi'i scholars who considered that if a person's traveling, he can be the imam of the Jumu'ah prayer. And again, when we're talking about traveler or resident, that's just, we're talking about the hukum, because you may be the way they term it is like a traveler, but you're staying in an area for a week, 7 days. So technically, according to the hukum, you're a resident of that place. So if you're a resident, then you can be the imam. But if you're a traveler, meaning that you're going to be in that place, you're outside of your home city, and you're going to be in this place for less than 4 days, then you're considered a traveler.
ويكره السلس والقروح مع باد لغيرهم ومن يكره داع.
نعم. يكره السلس، صاحب السلس مكروه يصلي به سالم من السلس، وصاحب شيء من المعهوات كالقروح هذا مثلا مكروه يصلي به أحد سالم من ذلك. مع باد لغيرهم كذلك أهل البادية مكروه أن يصلي بهم أهل الحضر، لأن أهل البادية أهل شفاء وجهل، عندهم شوية حماقة وسوء أدب دائما، مكروه أن يصلي بهم أهل الحضر. ومن يكره دع كذلك مثلا من يكره في دينه، يكرهه قوم لأجل دينهم وليسوا مثلا فيهم الأفاضل، أنا يكرهونه في دينه لا يكرهونه لأجل الدنيا، مكروه أن يصلي الناس به. ما إذا كان يكرهه الأفاضل أو يكرهه جل القوم فهذا تحرم الصلاة به، فإن قلاه جلهم أو فاضلوه منع والظاهر ألا تبطلوا، كما قال أحمد مولود.
It is disliked for one who is suffering from incontinence or open sores to lead the prayer. It's considered makruh. Also disliked is a Bedouin leading sedentary people, and the reason for this is because the Bedouins were originally typically characterized by being very harsh people and not having good manners. So you want to place the person that's the most compassionate and merciful after. No. So he said a Bedouin, in the famous story, a Bedouin came into the Masjid of the Prophet ﷺ and urinated in the Masjid. So they're considered, they don't know, they don't have many the manner, just because they're out in the open, so they have to be very harsh to withstand the conditions that they're living in. So if Bedouin is leading other Bedouins, then it's fine. But if it's a sedentary a jama'ah of sedentary people, then they shouldn't have somebody with like harsh character and ignorance. Do not allow one who is disliked for valid religious reasons to lead the prayer. So it's also disliked for a person it's makruh to have an imam that's disliked by people in the jama'ah. And this is if he's disliked because of religious reasons, like he's leaving a lot of the extra in the recommended acts, and he's not taking full care. He's not a fasiq, but he's not taking care of his deen in the best way. So this person, if people don't like him, it's makruh for him to be the imam. But this is if it's just a portion of the jama'ah, and they're not the say pillars of the community or the righteous people of the community. Whereas if it's the righteous people of the community that do not like this person, or the entire congregation do not like this person, then it becomes haram for that person to lead the jama'ah. وكالأشل وإمامة بلا ردا بمسجد صلاة تجتلى.
كذلك مكروه إمامة الأشل على ما قال ابن عاشر، وقال محمد مولود أنها جائزة، وجاز أقطع أشل أعمى. كالأشل مكروه عند ابن عاشر. وإمامة بلا ردا كذلك مكروه الرجل أن يصلي في المسجد بلا ردا إماما، مع أن الرداء مندوب في حق كل مصل، إلا أن الكراهة يعني تتأكد في حق الإمام إذا كان في المسجد. صلاة تجتلى بين الأساطين كذلك الصلاة تجتلى أي يتنحى عنها، فهي مكروه بين الأساطين يعني بين دعائمها التي تكون في المسجد، تكون ترفعه بين الأساطين. وقدام الإمام كذلك أمام الإمام بلا ضرورة مكروه. جماعة بعد صلاة التزام كذلك مكروه إذا صلى الإمام الراتب وهو الذي قدمه القوم للصلاة، مكروه أن يأتي قوم بعده من 2 فأكثر ويصلون جماعة لما في ذلك من الطعن في الإمام.
Also, it's disliked to have one who suffers from paralysis of the hand or arm, or who has lost a limb to lead the prayer. So this is a person that's lost a limb or has a paralysis in their limb, and they can fulfill all the pillars and the conditions of the prayer, but they just have that deficiency. It's disliked for them to be the imam. There's another opinion that states that it's not disliked, that it's permissible to have them as the imam. Or one who leads the prayer without a prayer shawl in a masjid. So it's recommended for every single person that wants to pray to have a prayer shawl, something to cover their shoulders, even if their shoulders are already covered, but something to put over their shoulders, a ridat. But if it's in a masjid, it's makruh for the imam to pray without a shawl. So it's recommended for every person praying, but especially recommended for the imam in a masjid. And so for that reason, because there's a special recommendation for the imam in the masjid, if he leaves it, then it's makruh for him. Also disliked is considering performing prayer between the pillars of a masjid. So that between the pillars of a masjid, it's makruh to pray. And there's a difference of opinion in the reason. Some say because it's a place that the devils in the masjid, that's where they reside. So the line should be away from the pillars of the masjid. Or in front of the imam without necessity. So to pray in front of the imam without necessity is disliked, it's makruh. Or a second congregation after the salaried or regular imam's prayer is over. So if there's a salaried imam at a place, whether it's a masjid or a school, whatever it may be, or there's a regular imam, he doesn't have a salary, but he prays the prayers there, gives adhan, gives aqam, and he prays the jama'ah there. Once that regular or salaried imam has prayed jama'ah, after he's done, it's makruh for another congregation, another jama'ah to come and pray in that place.
هي تعرف العلة ظنية، والعلة الظنية لا تتخلف بتخلفها. هي علة ظنية ليست مثلا ميقنة، وقالوا أن ما علل بالمظنة لا يتخلف ولو تخلفت تلك المظنة.
And the reason for that, to not repeat a congregation after the regular salaried imam has prayed, is to prevent people from thinking that that second jama'ah has a problem with the imam. So if we have a regular imam praying someplace, and then the jama'ah comes in and prays after he's prayed, some people might think, oh, do they have a problem with this imam? Is that why they're praying another jama'ah? So to prevent that, it's considered disliked for a second jama'ah to pray after the first imam. So they can go outside of the masjid, even in the courtyard of the masjid, as long as it's outside of the masjid, or they can pray individually in the masjid. وراتب مجهول أو من أبينا وأغلف عبد خصي ابن زنا.
حتى مكروه أن يرتب القوم مجهولا، يعني لا يعرفون هل يعرف أحكام الصلاة أم لا. لم يظهر عليه فسق، ظاهر حاله طيب، ولكن مكروه. ولكن بعض العلماء قال مكروه الصلاة بالمجهول مطلقا سواء كان عن ترتب أم لا، إلا من رأيته راتب قوم رشداء، واحد دخلت عليه في مسجد وأم ناس طيبين ممكن أن تصلي به وأنت لا تعرفه. ومن أوبنا كذلك المأبون، وهو الذي يتكسر في كلامه مثل النساء، معناه عندما يخاطب يحرك يديه مثل تحريك النساء، وتخيل مثلا يكون الله يهديه ذاك مكروه. ما إذا كان يشتهي الشهوة مثلا النسوية، مثلا وكونه يفعل به مثل فعل ما رأيك يقال له المتخنث، شيطان صار فاسقا. وأغلف لا أغلف هذا الذي لم تفعل به سنة الختان، مكروه يصلي الناس به. عبد كذلك مكروه أن يرتب العبد أو الخصي أو ابن الزنا، لأن الناس تتطرق له دائما تقول ولا أب له، فالإمام لا بد أن يكون له بال مثلا، ما دائما إذا كان يقدح فيه يؤدي ذلك لنفور الجماعة منه.
It's also disliked to have as a salaried or regular imam one who is unknown morally, or someone who speaks or is repented from serious wrongs but others still suspect it. So if a person is unknown morally, like he outwardly, it seems that he's a good person, but you don't know his state. Does he know his individual obligation? Does he know his farad ayn? Does he know the rules regarding to the prayer? So this person's state is unknown, so it's makruh to have him as a regular or salaried imam. Also, a person, man ubina, is the person that's an effeminate man. So if a person's like, he's not intentionally trying to imitate women, but in the way he speaks or the way he moves his hand when he talks or the way he walks, he's effeminate. So for that person, it's makruh to have him as the regular or salaried imam. Whereas if a person is doing that intentionally, trying to imitate women, then that makes him a fasiq. Also disliked as a regular or salaried imam is someone uncircumcised. He has not fulfilled the sunnah of the circumcision. A bondsman, a eunuch, or one born out of wedlock. And the reason for that, for those, is because those are the types of people that people could talk about and start saying things about. They might be good people, but if he's born out of wedlock, people might start saying things about him, and that's going to cause the congregation to become fewer and fewer, because the imam should be a person that everybody likes and everybody respects and everybody wants to go to the jama'ah. So if he has something, a characteristic about him that people are it's going to cause them to not be motivated to pray in the jama'ah, then it's makruh to have him as the regular or salaried imam. A eunuch, a person that does not have that has his testicles cut off. وجاز عنين وأعمى الكنو مجذم خفا وهذا الممكن.
جاز عنين وهو صغير ذكر الذي لا يتأتى منه وطء، وأعمى ولكن البصير أفضل أنه يتوقع محل نجاسة ويعرف القبلة بالضبط. الكنو يعني هذا الذي لا يمكنه النطق ببعض الحروف، ليس عن لحن بل هو لا يمكنه لعجز، لكن الأفضل الفصيح اللي مثلا لا لكنة فيه. مشذم خف، ذلك صاحب الجذام الخفيف الذي لا يجر عدوى، لو صلى بالناس لو جاء للمسجد أو الجماعة ما يجر لهم عدوى. إذا كان جذامه شديد فذلك ينحى ولا يدخل المسجد مطلقا. وهذا الممكن أي ما ذكرنا من شروط الإمامة ومن مكروهاتها، هذا هو الممكن الآن، معناه هو الذي يناسب أن يجعل في هذا النظم القليل.
Acceptable in this position of a regular or salaried imam is someone who is impotent, blind, and the blind man, as long as he knows how to find the qibla by asking people where is such and such, where is such and such landmark, or where is such and such star, or what is the sunrise, or what is the sunset, so forth. He knows that by asking about things he can figure out where the qibla is. That person, it's permissible to take him as an imam. One who is speech impaired, this is lekin, so he's making mistakes in the recitation of the Quran, or the sayings of the prayer, but it's because of a speech impediment. Or a leper whose disease is limited. If a person has leprosy and it's limited, meaning that it's not contagious, or it hasn't gone over most of his body. It's limited in that it's on a small portion of his body and it's not contagious. Then it's permissible for that person to be the imam. This is what is possible to cover in such an abridged work, and he mentions that because he's talking about the imam, and in the longer text of fiqh, they go into more details about the imam, and here he just mentioned a few things about the imam and about the jama'ah. والمقتدي الإمام يتبع خلا زيادة قد حققت عنها عدلا.
مقتدي يجب عليه أن يتبع الإمام مطلقا، حيثما ركع، حيثما سجد، حيثما فعل أي شيء يفعل يتبعه معه، إلا إذا زاد الإمام أو نقص. زاد ركعة قام إلى خامسة لا يتبعه المأموم، أو نقص قام عن سجدة لا يتبعه بل يسبح عليه، فإذا لم يفهم ويفعل ما فهم عنه وما رجع إليه يفعل هو السجد ويتابع إمامه. زيادة ونقصان لا يتبعه في ذلك. قد حققت، هذا إذا كانت الزيادة محققة، ما إذا كانت مشكوكا فيها فيجب عليه أن يمشي معه. عنها عدلا، معناها عدل عن الزيادة أو النقصان الذي نقص، جنب ذلك.
The one following the imam should continue following him unless an addition is definitely discovered, in which case he should not follow him in performing that addition. So whatever the imam does in the prayer, a person has to follow it, unless the imam subtracted something from the prayer or added something from the prayer. And this is if the follower is sure that the imam subtracted or added something. Whereas if they have doubt, they think that he might have added something, you follow him. So he's praying dhuhr, and now he stands up for a fifth rak'ah, and you know for a fact that he's prayed 4, then you sit down, you do not follow him. So the principle of you follow the imam, whatever he does, it has a few exceptions. So if you're sure that he's added something, or you're sure that he's subtracted something, then you do not follow the imam. You either add that thing, and you don't follow him in the subtraction. Whereas if you have doubt, like say he stands up for a fifth rak'ah, or you think it might be a fifth rak'ah, or it might be a fourth rak'ah, because you weren't following the number of rak'ahs, then you follow the imam. So if you have doubt, you follow the imam. وأحرم المسبوق فر ودخل مع الإمام كيف كان العمل؟
كيفما كان العمل. نتابع.
مكبرا ساجدا أو راكعا ألفاه لا في جلسة وتابعا.
أحرم المسبوق إذا دخل المسبوق ووجد الإمام يصلي، هذا إذا كان الإمام راتبا يجب عليه أن يدخل معه مباشرة خوف الطعن فيه. إذا كان غير راتب فقط كان يريد أن يحصل على فضل جماعة السنة له أن يبادر فورا، يعني وجوبا. كيفما وجده كان قائما راكعا أو ساجدا أو جالسا. كيفما كان العمل مكبرا إن ساجدا أو راكعا. إذا كان مثلا وجد الإمام راكعا أو ساجدا يزيد تكبيرة على تكبيرة الإحرام، يكبر للإحرام وبعد ذلك يزيد تكبيرة. هذا إذا وجده راكعا، لا في جلسة، لا إذا وجده جالسا كجلسة الوسطى أو جلسة بين السجدتين، فهذا يكبر فقط للإحرام ولا يزيد تكبيرا آخر. وتابع معناه وجبت عليه متابعة الإمام.
Anyone who has missed a portion of the congregational prayer should immediately perform it after the takbir of sanctification. So if a person came in to the prayer late and they only caught 2 rak'ahs, for example, of dhuhr, then after the imam says assalamu alaikum, they stand up and make up what they missed. Actually, no, let me take that back. Anyone who missed a portion of the congregational prayer should immediately perform the takbir of sanctification and enter the prayer. If a person comes late to the jama'ah and the imam has already started the prayer, so you enter into the masjid and the imam's already praying, then you immediately do takbir. After you go to the line, you do takbir, and then you enter into the prayer, and you join the imam whatever position he's in. If he's in ruku', you go to ruku'. If he's in sujood, you go to sujood. And if he's in the sitting, you go to the sitting. But he should follow the imam in whatever position he is while uttering a second takbir, if he finds the imam prostrating or bowing. So if the imam's in ruku', he's bowing, or he's in sujood, he's prostrating, then you do a takbir, you say Allahu Akbar to enter to the prayer, then you do a second takbir to go into that action. So you say Allahu Akbar, and then another Allahu Akbar to go to the ruku' or to go to the sajda. Whereas if you find him in the sitting position, then you just say Allahu Akbar, and then you sit down without saying takbir. And only the first takbir if the imam is sitting. إن سلم الإمام قام قاضيا أقواله وفي الأفعال بانيا.
نعم. إذا سلم الإمام وبقي للمسبوق شيء من الصلاة يقوم قاضيا في أقواله بأن يجعل ما فاته قبل الدخول مع الإمام بالنسبة للأقوال هو الأول، وبالنسبة للأفعال هو الأخير، فيجعل ما أدرك مع الإمام بالنسبة للأفعال أول الصلاة، ويجعل ما فاته مع الإمام بالنسبة للأقوال هو أولها. ومثال ذلك من أدرك الإمام جالسا في جلسة الوسطى من المغرب، يقوم عندما ينهي الإمام الصلاة، أدرك معه ركعة واحدة، عندما ينهي الإمام الصلاة يقوم ويقرأ بالفاتحة والسورة جهرا، فهذه كأنها هي أول ركعة بالنسبة للقراءة. وعندما ينهي السجدة الأخيرة يجلس مباشرة، لأن هذه هي الركعة الثانية بالنسبة للأفعال، ويقوم ثانيا ويأتي بركعة وسورة، لأن هذه هي الركعة الثانية بالنسبة للأقوال، ويجلس ويسلم. فحينئذ الصلاة انتهت بالجلوس لأنه بانيا في الأفعال، وانتهت أيضا بالركعتين الأخيرات انتهوا بقراءة الفاتحة والسورة جهرا لأنه قاض في الأقوال.
So if the person came into the prayer late, after the imam says salam, when the imam says his final salam, the latecomer should stand up and make up any missed recitation. So he's going to make up what he missed. But there's two things that the person is going to do. There's things that he's going to make up, and there's things that he's going to build upon. The make up, this is what is called qada, Q-A-D-A, and the build upon is bina, B-I-N-A. So he should stand up and make up any missed recitation from the Imam's earlier rak'ah, but he should build upon the already performed physical actions of the prayer done with the Imam. So the example is if a person catches the last rak'ah of Maghrib. So he missed 2 rak'ahs of Maghrib, and he caught the final rak'ah of Maghrib. Now he's going to stand up, he has to make up 2 rak'ahs. So when he stands up, now in his actions, he's actually in his, now this is the follower that came late, in his actions he's in his second rak'ah. So in his actions he's going to build upon what he already has. So he's going to consider this like his second rak'ah. But he's going to make up the recitations that he missed. So he missed the first and second rak'ah of the Imam. So he missed Fatiha and a surah with the Imam, and then Fatiha and a surah. So now he's going to stand up, and he's going to recite Fatiha out loud, and then a surah out loud, and then he's going to go through the bowing and the prostrations, and then he's going to sit and do a tashahhud, because in his actions this is his second rak'ah. So normally after you recite your first Fatiha and surah, you don't do a middle sitting. But because in his actions this is as if it's his middle sitting, so he would sit down there, do a tashahhud. Now he stands up. His actions, this is his third rak'ah, but he's still making up the recitations from the second rak'ah. So he reads Fatiha out loud again, and then a surah, and then he's going to sit down and complete his prayer. So he's going to do makeup of the utterances of the prayer, the Fatiha and the surah, and he's going to build upon his actions of the prayer. So if it was a 4 rak'ah prayer and he caught the last rak'ah, so if it was a 4 rak'ah prayer, dhuhr, he caught the last rak'ah. So now when he stands up, this is actually his second rak'ah, right? So he stands up, but he's going to make up the recitations that he missed from the first and second rak'ah. So he's going to read Fatiha out loud, it's dhuhr. He's going to read Fatiha and a surah, and then he's going to sit down and do tashahhud. And then after that, he's going to stand up. Even though this is his third rak'ah, as far as his actions, he still has to make up the utterances of the second rak'ah. So he reads Fatiha and a surah, and then he goes, but he doesn't sit now. He continues, he does this, fulfills this rak'ah, and then he does another rak'ah. Is that clear? So yeah, in the Maghrib prayer, he's going to sit 3 times. He sat once with the Imam, he sat the second time because of his middle sitting, and then he sat the last time his final sitting.
كذلك غير المغرب أيضا 3 مرات لأن المغرب ما فيه إلا 3 ركعات.
So if he catches the last rak'ah with the Imam, in his prayer, in his prayer he's going to be sitting in 3 rak'ahs. He's going to sit 3 times.
لا إذا أدرك ركعتين فلا جلوس إلا الجلوس المعتاد.
Right. Well, the difference is if we just said you just do qada, because there's 2 other opinions. There's one opinion says all you do is qada, you just do makeup. The other opinion says all you do is build. So if we said all you do is build upon your prayer, so say you caught the last rak'ah from Maghrib. Now you stand up, this is your second rak'ah as far as your actions, right? So you're just going to build upon your prayer. So you do Fatiha and a surah, and then you're going to sit down and do a tashahhud, and then you're going to stand up, and you're just going to recite Fatiha. Because you're building upon your prayer. This is your third rak'ah, and normally in a third rak'ah you don't recite a surah and you don't recite Fatiha out loud. So on that opinion, if we just said all you do is build upon your prayer, in the actions and in the utterances, you're not going to read a Fatiha and a surah in the second, or you're not going to read the surah and the Fatiha out loud in the third rak'ah. Is that clear? Right, well Fatiha you're reading in every rak'ah anyway, but we're saying do you read it out loud and do you add a surah? You would have to read Fatiha, but do you add the surah? You do if you, according to Imam Malik. The bina is as far as your actions. So say we said you don't do bina of your actions, you do makeup of your actions. So you caught the third rak'ah of Maghrib. So now you stand up, you're going to recite you're doing makeup of the prayer, you're not building upon the prayer. So you're doing makeup of the first rak'ah, you read Fatiha out loud, you read a surah, and you don't sit. Because you're making up your first rak'ah as it was originally. So you don't do a middle sitting. So then you stand back up,
and then you're going to recite Fatiha out loud, and then a surah, and then you're going to do a sitting. So on that, you would only do two sittings. Does that clarify that? Well, that's one opinion. There's one opinion that there's just binat, there's one opinion that there's just qada, and then Imam Malik joined between the two because they're two different hadiths. And no. Because the hadith, and this is a good proof to show like the differences of opinion as far as madhahib. There's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said that don't go to the prayer running, because it's makruh to run to the prayer, or you should you go fast but don't run. Go to the prayer with dignity and tranquility, and then whatever you catch with the imam, pray it with him, and whatever you miss, make it up. And in another hadith, the same exact thing, but at the end it says, whatever you miss, build upon it. فَقْضُوا and then فَأَتِمُّوا. So one imam took that you just do build upon. He took with the narration of just build upon. The other imam said you make up. Imam Malik joined between the two seemingly contradicting narrations, saying that you build upon your actions and you make up your utterances.
ابن العربي قال لأنه يستضيء بنور النبوة إنه يضيء بمصابيح النبوة.
And he said, Ibn al-Arabi, one of the famous Maliki scholars, used to say when he would mention things like this, how Imam Malik would join between two seemingly contradicting hadiths. He said the reason Malik was able to do this is because he could illuminate things using the prophetic light, the light of the Prophet ﷺ.
إن حصل الشفع أقل من ركعة والسهو إذا كاحتمل.
And so if there's any questions on that particular point about making up and building upon, after Isha I'll stick around to clear that up. So we'll move on. كبر إن حصل شفعا وأقل من ركعة والسهو إذا كاحتمل.
نعم، يكبر المسبوق إذا انفصل عن الإمام إذا كان حصل الشفعا معه، معناها انفصل عنه عن ركعتين. إذا قام يقول الله أكبر، أو أقل من ركعة. إذا كان أدرك مع الإمام شيئا أقل من ركعة كذلك ينفصل عن الإمام يقول الله أكبر. أما إذا كان انفصل عن ركعة أو عن ثلاث فلا يكبر، بل يقوم ويبتدئ الفاتحة. السهو إذا كاحتمل، السهو ما دام المأموم مع الإمام يحمله عنه، يعني سهو يؤدي إلى القبلية أو البعدية. أما سهو الفرائض فلا يحمله عنه. ويسجد المسبوق قبلي الإمام، يعني السهو إذا كاحتمل، فمعناه أنه إذا انفصل عن الإمام يرجع عليه، يعني يحسب عليه السهو. لو فعل زيادة يسجد البعدي، ولو فعل نقصا يسجد القبلي، لأنه انفصل عن الإمام ما يحمل عنه شيء بعده. ويسجد المسبوق قبلي الإمام معه وبعد ينقضى بعد السلام. نزين.
While rising, let him utter another takbir if he caught an even number or less than one rak'ah with the imam. So if a person, after he came late to the prayer, he missed a number of rak'ahs, after the imam says assalamu alaikum, he's going to stand up to make up what he missed. But if he caught an even number, if he caught 2 rak'ahs, or he caught less than one rak'ah, then when he stands up, he would say Allahu Akbar after standing up. He would say Allahu Akbar. If he caught only 1 rak'ah or 3 rak'ahs, then when he stands up to make up what he missed, he does not say Allahu Akbar. As for anything forgotten during the previous rak'ah with the imam bears the responsibility, and the follower need not redress them unless they occurred after continuing on his own. So if a person, while he's praying with the imam, just as he mentioned earlier, the imam bears the sahu of the follower. But as soon as the imam says assalamu alaikum and the follower now stands up and is making up what he missed, any mistakes that he makes, he has to address them. So if he caught an even number, meaning if he caught 2 rak'ahs or less than 1 rak'ah, he says Allahu Akbar when standing, when going into the standing position. If he caught 1 or 3, he does not say it. As for anything forgotten during ويسجد المسبوق قبلي الإمام معه وبعدين قضى بعد السلام.
أدرك ذاك السهو أو لا قيدوا من لم يحصل ركعة لا يسجد.
أدرك ذاك السهو أو لا قيدوا. قال عن يسجد المسبوق قبلي الإمام إذا كان المسبوق على إمامه قبلي يسجده معه الآن. إذا كان أدرك معه ركعتين يسجد معه الآن قبل أن ينفصل عنه. وبعد ينقضى بعد السلام. إذا كان على إمامه بعدي ينتظر حتى يقضي ما عليه فيسجده بعد أن يسلم، يعني المسبوق. أدرك ذاك السهو، سواء كان أدرك ذلك السهو يعني موجب ذلك السهو، كان ناشئا مثلا عن سورة تركها الإمام وهو في ذلك الوقت معه، أو لم يدرك ذلك الموجب. قيدوا من لم يحصل ركعة لا يسجد، من لم يدرك مع الإمام ركعة كاملة لا يسجد ذلك السهو. ولو سجده مثلا عامدا بطلت صلاته.
The one who comes late and joins the Imam should prostrate a qabli with the Imam, but if the Imam prostrates a ba'di, then he should rise after the Imam's salam and make up the ba'di after his own salam. So if a person came late to the prayer, after the Imam says assalamu alaikum, he's going to stand up and make up what he missed. If the Imam did something in the prayer that requires a qabli, and he's prostrating it before the salam, then this latecomer goes ahead and prostrates the qabli with him. Whereas if the Imam says assalamu alaikum, and then he begins to rise and the Imam does a ba'di, he's prostrating 2 prostrations after the salam because of something he added, then the person, the latecomer does not prostrate then and there with the Imam. He waits until he completes his entire prayer and then prostrates after his own salam, because it's a prostration that's supposed to be after the salam, and that latecomer has not said salam yet. Irrespective of whether he caught the mistake with the Imam or not, however, the scholars stipulated that he should not prostrate it if he did not complete at least 1 rak'ah with the Imam. So this follower prostrates that qabli with the Imam, irrespective of whether or not he caught that mistake, he caught that the Imam in the rak'ah where he made the mistake. So say, for example, the Imam made a mistake in rak'ah number 1. All this follower caught was rak'ah number 4. He still prostrates with the Imam for that mistake of the rak'ah that he did not catch with. But he should not prostrate unless he caught 1 complete rak'ah with the Imam. So if he caught the Imam in the last rak'ah, in the last sitting, so he's going to make up this entire prayer. When the Imam prostrates that qabli, he should not prostrate with him, because he has to make up the entire prayer. وبطلت لمقتد بمبطلي على الإمام غير فرع منجلي من ذكر الحدث أو به غلب إن بادر الخروج منها وندب تقديم مؤتم يتم بهم فإن أباه فانفردوا أو قدموا.
قال أن كل صلاة بطلت على الإمام تبطل على المأموميين وغير فرع منجلي، غير فروع ذكرها الفقهاء فهو ذكر منها أفراد وترك أفراد. من تذكر الحدث في أثناء الصلاة فلا تبطل عليه الصلاة والمأموميون يتمون صلاتهم وهي صحيحة. كذلك من تذكر النجاسة في أثناء الصلاة في ثوبه أو في بدنه فقطع الصلاة والمأموميون صلاة صحيحة. أو به غلب بالحدث، معناها تجدد عليه حدث في أثناء الصلاة غلبة فلا تبطل عليه الصلاة دونهم. إن بادر الخروج شرط، عندما تذكر المانع يبادر الخروج. أما لو تذكر المانع واستمر بعد ذلك بالمأمومين بطلت صلاتهم مع صلاته. وندب تقديم مؤتم يتم بهم، مندوب له إذا تجدد عليه مبطل للصلاة وتذكره يقدم مثلا أحد المأمومين يتم بهم الصلاة. فإذا أباه معناها لم أبى التقدم أو أبى الإمام أن يقدم أحدا انفردوهم، وهذا خلاف الأولى، أو قدموا وهو الندب.
The prayer of one following the Imam is rendered invalid by whatever invalidates the Imam's prayer, except in an obvious circumstance. So the general principle is that whatever invalidates the Imam's prayer also invalidates the prayer of the congregation, except in obvious circumstances. There's certain exceptions to this rule, and Ibn Ashir here mentions a few. This has 2 permutations, that means exceptions. The first is when the Imam remembers breaking his wudu or is overcome by his loss during hadath. So say during the prayer, the Imam is praying and then he remembers that he does not have wudu. Or his wudu is broken during the prayer. Now his prayer is invalid
but the prayer of the congregation is not invalid. So this is an exception to that rule that states that every time, if the imam's prayer is invalid, so too is the prayer of the congregation. And in that case, if the imam remembers that he does not have wudu or his wudu is broken, it is recommended that the imam advance one of the followers nearest to him to complete the congregational prayer with them. So it's recommended for him to step back and replace himself with one of the people in the congregation. If he refuses to, then they either pray separately or advance someone among them to lead the remainder of the prayer. So if the person that the imam said, told him to go finish the prayer, if he refuses, he doesn't want to be the imam, or the jama'ah doesn't want to follow this person as being an imam, then they can either continue the prayer as individuals, or they can push somebody else to be the imam. So if there's any questions, inshallah, after the prayer.